The termination letter felt colder than the January air whipping against the 50th floor windows. Somi Hayes, 7 months pregnant, and the true architect of Vanguard Strategies, was being fired. By her own husband, CEO Matthew Thorne. The official reason cited in the sterile HR document: corporate restructuring and redundancy. The real reason was walking right past Somi's glass-walled office, leaving a $5,000 trail of Baccarat Rouge 540 in her wake. That was Brianna Jennings, her husband's new executive analyst, and Somi's replacement in every sense of the word. Matthew thought he had won. He thought he'd discarded his past for a shiny new future. But he made one fatal mistake. He forgot who was watching. He didn't know that the board of directors, the old lions of finance, had just found their real CEO. Vanguard Strategies wasn't just a company. It was a testament to Somi Hayes' brilliance and Matthew Thorne's ambition. They had met at Wharton, a perfect pairing of intellect and charisma. Somi was the strategist, the one who saw patterns in data that others missed. Matthew was the salesman, the one who could sell ice in a blizzard. Together they had built Vanguard from a 2-person startup into a Park Avenue consulting titan. But the partnership had soured. Matthew, now CEO, had long since begun to treat Somi's insights as his own. She was his secret weapon, a title she once cherished and now despised. It meant she did the work, and he took the credit. This morning was no different. The executive boardroom was silent as Matthew paced before the quarterly review. "And so," Matthew said, his voice booming, "by leveraging synergistic market alignments," a phrase Somi hated, a phrase he'd stolen from her notes, "I project a 15% growth in the Norstar Logistics account." Somi, seated at the table, subtly shifted her weight. The baby kicked, a small, private rebellion. She cleared her throat. "Matthew, if I may, the data from Project Atlas suggests the Norstar models are flawed. They're over-leveraged in their Asia-Pacific routes. If we don't advise them to divest, they'll face a supply chain collapse within 6 months." The room chilled. Matthew stopped pacing. He gave Somi the smile he reserved for disobedient children. "Somi, darling," he said, the word darling, a tiny, sharp knife. "Project Atlas is your pet project. It's an R&D burn. We're here to discuss real-world profits, not theoreticals. Let's leave the heavy data to the big boys, shall we?" The condescension was so thick she could barely breathe. The big boys on her team were 2 PhDs from MIT, whom she had personally recruited. She felt a flush of anger, but held her tongue. The meeting adjourned, and Matthew's praise was for himself. As the executives filed out, one remained: Arthur Kensington, the chairman of the board. He was a man from an older, sterner generation of Wall Street, sharp as a tack and impeccably dressed in a Savile Row suit. He had co-founded the original firm Vanguard had merged with. "Somi," he said, his voice a low rumble. "A word." She waited. "Project Atlas," he said, ignoring Matthew, who was preening by the door. "You presented a summary to the R&D committee last month. I read it. It's not a pet project." "I believe it's the future of the company, Arthur," she said quietly. "It's a predictive AI. It doesn't just analyze, it anticipates. Supply chains, market volatility." "I know what it is," Arthur said. He looked over her shoulder at Matthew, who was now impatiently tapping his Mont Blanc pen. "Your husband is a fine showman, Somi. But he can't read the music. He just likes the applause. Don't let him shelve Atlas. He's the CEO, Arthur. He controls the budget." "Budgets," Arthur mused, "can be reallocated. Keep your head up, my dear. True talent is a patient predator." He nodded and left. Matthew was waiting for her back at his office, his mood dark. What was that? You undermined me in there, Somi. I was presenting a counter-argument. It's my job. Your job, he sneered, is to support me, especially now. This pregnancy, it's making you emotional, unfocused. And what was that with Arthur? Sucking up to the old man? He asked about Atlas. Atlas is finished, Matthew snapped. It's a waste. I'm reallocating those funds. We need a new face for the brand, a fresh perspective. That fresh perspective arrived the following Monday. Her name was Brianna Jennings. She had a resume that was paper-thin, a marketing degree from a state school, and 2 years as an influencer liaison. But she was devastatingly beautiful and hung on Matthew's every word. He hired her as his executive analyst, a position he created just for her. Somi, the chief strategy officer, was told to onboard her. The onboarding consisted of Brianna sitting in Somi's office, filing her nails and asking questions like, "So do you, just do spreadsheets all day? That sounds so boring." Somi tried to be professional. "I run predictive models for our top-tier clients. It's complex data analysis." Right, Brianna said, scrolling through Instagram. "Listen, Matthew, Mr. Thorne says I'm here to observe the workflow. But he really wants me to focus on branding. I just feel like the company's vibe is old, don't you think?" That night, Somi went home to their sterile, minimalist Soho loft. It had felt like a home once. Now it was just a waiting room. Matthew came home late, smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. It was floral and expensive. Baccarat Rouge 540. "You're working too hard, Matthew," she said, trying to keep the accusation out of her voice as he loosened his tie. "Closing deals, Somi," he said, not looking at her. "Someone has to. You seem tired. Maybe you should think about starting your maternity leave early." "I'm only 7 months, Matthew. I'm fine." "The board worries. Your condition is a liability. It makes you unfocused," he said, echoing his own words. "We need people who are 100% in the game." He went to the guest room, as he often did. Somi was left alone in the cold, white living room, her hand on her stomach. She knew, with chilling certainty, that he wasn't just talking about her job. He was talking about her life. The shift in the office was palpable. Brianna Jennings, once a curiosity, was now a fixture. She was always at Matthew's side, carrying a leather-bound iPad and laughing at his jokes a little too loudly. She redecorated her office, which was conspicuously next to Matthew's, in shades of cream and rose gold. She ordered new, ridiculously expensive ergonomic chairs for the executive floor, citing employee wellness, while simultaneously recommending budget cuts to Somi's data team. Somi's one true friend at the firm, Sarah, the head of HR, watched with growing alarm. Sarah was a woman who navigated the corporate world with a practiced, cynical smile, but in private she was fiercely loyal. "You need to be careful, E," Sarah said, cornering Somi by the coffee machine in the quiet kitchen. "The whispers are bad." "What whispers?" Somi asked, pouring decaf. "Her, Brianna. She's telling people that you're struggling with the pregnancy, that your work is slipping. She's covering for you on the Northstar account." Somi nearly dropped her mug. "She's what?" "She doesn't have the security clearance for the Northstar files. She wouldn't even understand the first page." "She does now. Matthew gave it to her. He's looped her into all your major projects. He's positioning her." "Positioning her for what?" Somi asked, but the cold knot in her stomach already knew the answer. "For your job, Somi. Wake up." Sarah sighed, stirring her own coffee. "Look, I'm HR. I'm not supposed to take sides, but I'm also your friend. I saw them. Thursday night. I was meeting a candidate at the St. Regis, at the King Cole Bar. They were in a corner booth. It wasn't a business meeting, E. His hand was on her leg. They left together, and they didn't go home. The world tilted. Somi had suspected, of course, the late nights, the scent of perfume, the emotional distance, but hearing it from Sarah made it visceral, ugly, and real. The humiliation was a hot flash, burning her from the inside out. She confronted Matthew that night. She was calm. Too calm. I know about Brianna, Matthew. He was reading a financial report and didn't even look up. What about her? She's a great hire, full of energy. I know you're sleeping with her. I know you were at the St. Regis. He put the report down. His face was not guilty, not apologetic. It was annoyed. Somi, don't be hysterical. It's not a good look, especially not now. Hysterical? My husband is having a blatant affair with a 25-year-old he hired to undermine me. And I'm hysterical? You're emotional, he shot back, his voice rising. You're pregnant and you're paranoid. Brianna is an asset. You've become a liability. You question me in meetings. You're obsessed with that Money Pit Atlas project. You're not the woman I married. You've gotten comfortable. Soft. I'm soft? She repeated, incredulous. I built the entire strategy division that you take credit for. I am carrying your child. Allegedly, he said, the word landing with the force of a physical blow. Somi froze. What did you just say? A baby, he said, standing up, his shadow falling over her. Right when the company needs me most. It's just convenient, isn't it? A way to trap me, to secure your spot. She stared at him, horrified. This was a man she didn't know. The man she loved was gone, replaced by this cold, cruel stranger. Get out, she whispered. What? Get out. Go to the guest room. Go to the St. Regis. I don't care. Just get away from me. He sneered. Gladly. I'm tired of all this drama. He left. The door slammed. Somi slid down the wall, her hands protectively on her belly, and for the first time, she truly wept. The next day, she called Arthur Kensington. Arthur, it's Somi Hayes. I know who you are, child. You sound terrible. I need to talk to you about Project Atlas and about Matthew. I'm free in 10 minutes, he said. Meet me at my private club, the Century. No one from Vanguard will bother us there. She met him in a book-lined room that smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco. She laid it all out. The affair. Matthew's hostility. His attempts to sabotage her work. His dismissal of Atlas. Arthur listened, his fingers steepled. He didn't seem surprised. Matthew is a fool, he said simply when she had finished. He's a man who would burn down his own house just to feel the warmth of the fire. He sees Atlas as your project, so he wants it dead. He sees you as his old life, so he wants you gone. What do I do, Arthur? He's the CEO. He's freezing me out. Arthur smiled, a thin, wintry smile. You do nothing. You let him. But in the meantime, you finish Atlas, off the books. I have a discretionary fund, a shell company I use for consulting fees. I'll fund you. Send me the proposal tonight, from a private email. Why are you doing this, Arthur? He leaned forward. Somi, your father was my first partner. He was the brains, and I was the money. I see the same spark in you. I let Matthew Thorne take the reins of my company, of your father's legacy, because I thought he was what it needed. A showman. I was wrong. The company doesn't need a showman anymore. It needs a strategist. It needs an architect. He stood up. Finish the project, Somi. Let him think you're defeated. Let him think you're just a sad, pregnant wife. Let him underestimate you. It's the most powerful weapon a woman has. The end came faster than she thought. It was a Friday. A bitter, cold January Friday. Somi was working on the Atlas code on her personal laptop, the files firewalled and hidden. Her official work was on autopilot. She was just biding her time. At 3:00 p.m., an email popped up. Mandatory meeting, office of the CEO. She walked to Matthew's office, the baby sitting low and heavy. The atmosphere on the 50th floor was toxic. People avoided her gaze. Sarah, her friend from HR, was already in the room, sitting beside Matthew's desk. Sarah wouldn't look at Somi. Her face was pale, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. This was not a friendly visit. This was official. Matthew was standing by the window, looking out over Central Park. He was wearing a new, razor-sharp Tom Ford suit, and Brianna Jennings was there. She was sitting in the visitor's chair, looking smug, tapping on her phone. "Somi, thanks for coming in," Matthew said, his voice laced with false, corporate empathy. "Close the door." She did. "Somi," he began, "as you know, the market is in a period of transition. We've been analyzing our overhead and structural redundancies." "Get to the point, Matthew," Somi said, her voice flat. He turned. His eyes were cold. "Effective immediately. Your position as Chief Strategy Officer is being eliminated. It's a redundancy." Somi looked at Sarah. "Sarah? You're letting this happen?" Sarah finally looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and rage. "Somi, my hands are tied. I've been advised by legal." "We're restructuring the entire division," Matthew continued smoothly. "We're moving to a more agile, brand-focused model." He gestured to Brianna. "Brianna Jennings will be taking over as interim head of strategy, effective immediately." Brianna gave Somi a small, dismissive smile. "I'm so excited to bring a new vibe to the team," she purred. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot, acrid taste in her mouth. She was being replaced by this child, by her husband's mistress. "You can't be serious," Somi said, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. "I'm 7 months pregnant. You can't fire me. It's illegal." Matthew smiled. "Oh, we're not firing you for being pregnant, Somi. That would be illegal. We're firing you because your position is redundant. And for cause." "For cause?" He slid a blue folder across the desk. "It's all in here. A performance review. Neglect of duties. Your numbers on the North Star account have been slipping. Misuse of company time. That Atlas project you refused to shut down. Insubordination. It's a very clear-cut case. You're lucky we're not suing you for the wasted resources." It was a perfect, diabolical lie. He had used her pregnancy against her, claiming her neglect was the cause, not the other way around. He had poisoned her reputation, and Brianna had been his little spy, reporting every time Somi seemed tired or distracted. "Security will escort you out," Matthew said. "Your personal effects will be messengered to you. Sarah has your severance packet." Somi looked at the packet, then at Matthew. "Severance? You fire me for cause, but offer severance?" "We're generous," Matthew said. "We're offering you 3 months' pay in exchange for a full NDA. You sign, you get the money. You don't, you get nothing. And believe me, Somi, no one will hire a pregnant, disgraced executive. Take the deal." He was boxing her in. He knew she needed the money for the baby. "I'm not signing anything," she said, her voice finding a sudden core of steel. Matthew's eyes narrowed. "Suit yourself. You always were stubborn. That's your problem." "No, Matthew," Somi said, walking to the door. "It's yours." She opened the door. 2 large security guards, men she had known for years, were waiting. They looked ashamed. "Ms. Hayes, we have to ask you for your badge." The entire office was watching. The open-plan floor was silent. Everyone was pretending to work, but all eyes were on her. She, the pregnant wife, the C-suite executive, being walked out like a common criminal. Brianna walked past her, swinging her hips, and entered Somi's old office, her new office. Somi kept her head high. She walked to the elevator, the 2 guards flanking her. As the door slid shut, the last thing she saw was Matthew, standing with Brianna in the doorway of her old office, his arm possessively around Brianna's waist. They were both smiling. She got to the lobby, her legs shaking. She walked out onto Park Avenue, the icy wind hitting her like a slap. She was unemployed. She was 7 months pregnant, and she was married to a monster. She got in a cab and went to their loft. Her key wouldn't work. He had changed the locks. Taped to the door, in a manila envelope, was another set of documents. Divorce papers. He was citing irreconcilable differences and claiming the loft, which was in his name, was non-marital property. He hadn't just fired her. He had executed her. For 48 hours, Somi ceased to exist. She stayed on Sarah's couch, staring at the ceiling of the tiny Upper West Side apartment. Sarah had brought her home, fuming and crying on her behalf. "He's not just a snake, Somi. He's a hydra. He cut off every head. He had this planned for months. The performance review, the legal threats. He even had legal counsel, our firm, our lawyers, threaten my job if I interfered." Somi felt nothing, just a vast, cold emptiness. The baby kicked, and she felt a pang of guilt. She was endangering her child with this stress. "He'll pay," Somi whispered, the words sounding foreign. "How?" Sarah asked, handing her a cup of tea. "He has the money, the power, the lawyers. He has the company." "He doesn't have the company," Somi said, a spark igniting in the cold darkness. "He just rents the CEO chair. The company belongs to the board. It belongs to Arthur." She got up, her body aching. She pulled out the burner phone Arthur had insisted she buy. She made the call. "He did it, Arthur." "I saw," the old man's voice rumbled. "It's all over the internal memos. A bold new direction. Disgraceful. Are you all right?" "He locked me out of the apartment. He fired me for cause. He's trying to leave me with nothing." "Of course he is. He's a coward, and cowards are always cruel. Now listen to me. I've been busy. Do you know the Blackwood building on 57th Street? The private equity building? Yes. My shell company, Kensington Equity, has an office on the 34th floor. It's a ghost office. Empty. I've had a new server and 3 high-spec terminals installed. The 2 engineers you trusted from the Atlas team, the ones Matthew fired last month for budget. David and Wren? Yes. They've been on my payroll for 2 weeks. They're waiting for you. The board's annual review and strategy meeting is in 3 weeks. Matthew thinks it's a formality, a rubber stamp on his new vision. He's wrong. It's an audition, and he's about to be upstaged. A new strength surged through Somi. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold, pure focus. He had taken her job, her home, her dignity. He had weaponized her pregnancy. Fine. She would weaponize his own ignorance. For the next 3 weeks, Somi lived in that ghost office. David and Wren, brilliant and loyal, were ecstatic to be working on Atlas again. "He called it code bloat, boss," David said, his fingers flying across a keyboard. "He has no idea what we built. He let Brianna audit our work, and she just asked if we could make the logo pop more." "Good," Somi said, standing in front of a massive whiteboard, mapping out her strategy. "Let him focus on logos." They worked 18-hour days. Somi's pregnancy was a non-issue. She felt more energized than she had in years. She was fueled by righteous fury and the thrill of creation. Project Atlas wasn't just a predictive algorithm anymore. She was retooling it as a complete, scalable, plug-and-play operating system for Vanguard's clients. She was in secret contact with the CEO of Northstar Logistics, the client Matthew and Brianna were supposedly handling. The CEO, a pragmatic woman named Jessica Price, was furious. "Thorne's new analyst knows nothing," Jessica complained over a secure call. "She keeps sending me influencer gift box ideas. We're a $20 billion logistics firm, not a makeup brand. Matthew keeps fobbing me off. We're pulling the account, Somi. We're going to your competitor, BlackRock." "Don't," Somi said. "Not yet. Give me until February 1st, the day of the board meeting. I can give you something better. Not just a 15% growth. I can show you how to restructure your Asia-Pacific routes and save $200 million in the first year. Just trust me." There was a pause. "You were always the smart one, Hayes," Jessica said. "You've got till the 1st. Don't make me regret this." Somi hung up. She had her deadline, she had her team, and she had her weapon. Arthur visited once. He saw the equations on the walls, the live data streaming on the monitors. "My goodness, Somi," he murmured. This is the whole company. This is the next 50 years." "He thought it was a pet project," Somi said, taking a sip of water. "He thought I was a soft, emotional, pregnant woman. He's about to find out how wrong he was." While Somi was building an empire in secret, Matthew Thorne was enjoying his reign. He and Brianna were the new power couple of Vanguard. They were seen at all the right galas, featured in a fawning and expensive corporate-sponsored Forbes profile titled "The New Face of Strategy. Matthew Thorne and Brianna Jennings Revolutionize Vanguard." Brianna, in her new role as interim head of strategy, was a disaster. She had Somi's title, her office, and her husband, but she didn't have her brain. Her strategy consisted of changing the company font, commissioning a new $1 million V logo, and organizing mandatory synergy-building happy hours. The Northstar Logistics account was hemorrhaging. "Why are they dodging my calls, Brianna?" Matthew demanded, throwing a file on his desk. "They're just busy, babe," Brianna said, reapplying her lip gloss. "Jessica Price is a total ice queen. I sent her a lovely gift basket from Hermes. She'll come around." "She'd better," Matthew snapped. "I need that account stable for the board meeting. My presentation is based on the 15% growth Somi projected." "Ugh, Somi," Brianna scoffed. "Can we not talk about her? It's so depressing. I had to have the entire office saged to get her energy out. Anyway, your presentation is amazing. The new graphics I designed are super chic. The board will be so impressed." Matthew looked at the presentation slides. They were all style, sleek, black and silver graphics, with buzzwords like future forward, dynamic, and hyper-growth. There was no data, no substance, just Brianna's graphic design and his own blustering words. "It is good, isn't it?" he said, his ego mollified. He had completely forgotten about Project Atlas. He'd had Somi's old server wiped, her files deleted. He'd even laid off her legacy team, unaware that her two best engineers were now working against him. He heard through the grapevine that Somi had fled to her parents in Ohio, or had a nervous breakdown. It made him laugh. She was broken. He had won. His divorce lawyer, a shark named Mr. Harris, had confirmed it. "She's not contesting the apartment, Mr. Thorne. She hasn't even responded to the 4-cause filing. It's a default win. She gets nothing. As for the, child, we can file for a paternity test post-birth, and if it's yours, we can use it to leverage her future earnings, should she ever have any." Perfect, Matthew said. He wanted to destroy her so completely she could never be a threat. The day before the board meeting, he felt invincible. He was the CEO. He was the visionary. He had the beautiful woman. He was about to be confirmed as the permanent chairman of the board, replacing the aging Arthur Kensington. He practiced his speech in front of his office mirror. Gentlemen, Mrs. Blackwood, the future is not something we wait for. It is something we create. He was so focused on the applause he was about to receive, he never once stopped to think about the music. The annual board meeting was held in the largest conference room, the one on the 52nd floor, reserved for momentous occasions. It was a cavernous, intimidating space, dominated by a single 40-foot mahogany table. The board members were all present, Arthur Kensington at the head. To his right, Mrs. Genevieve Blackwood, an 80-year-old steel magnate who controlled a 20% stake. Julian Reed, a quiet, dangerous man from the tech investment world, and 4 others, all titans of industry. Matthew walked in, exuding confidence. He was the king in his court, and, in a stunning breach of protocol, Brianna was with him. Mr. Thorne, Arthur said, his voice mild but his eyes cold. This is a closed meeting, for board members and the CEO only. Brianna is my new head of strategy, Arthur, Matthew said, dismissively. She is essential to my presentation. She'll be taking minutes. Arthur glanced at the corporate secretary, who was already sitting, pen poised. We have a secretary for that. Brianna stays, Matthew said, challenging him. It was a power play. Arthur simply nodded, a flicker of something in his eyes. As you wish. Please begin. For 30 minutes, Matthew performed. He paced. He gesticulated. He showed off Brianna's slick, empty graphics. He promised hypergrowth. He spoke of synergy and rebranding. The board was silent. They didn't ask questions. They just watched. And so, Matthew concluded with a flourish, I'm sure you'll all agree, the future of Vanguard is bright. I've streamlined the old bloated departments. I've brought in new dynamic talent, and I've positioned us to be the dominant force in the market. He smiled, waiting for the applause. Silence. Mrs. Blackwood finally spoke, her voice like gravel. Mr. Thorne, your presentation is very shiny, but you haven't given us a single hard data point. You talk of the Norstar account. I had dinner with Jessica Price last night. She informs me she is pulling the account, effective today. Matthew's face went white. What? That's a lie. We're in active negotiations. Are you? Julian Reed chimed in. Because my sources say your new head of strategy sent Miss Price a gift basket for a $20 billion client. Brianna flushed bright red. It was a Hermes basket. Matthew was floundering. This is a temporary setback, a misunderstanding. We feel, Arthur said, his voice cutting through the panic, that the misunderstanding is yours, Matthew. You speak of streamlining, but you mean gutting. You speak of new talent, but you mean mistresses. You have, in 3 weeks, managed to alienate our largest client and destroy the morale of this company. How dare you? Matthew sputtered. I am the CEO. You can't. Oh, we can, Arthur said. You see, we were concerned about your vision. So we authorized a secondary, competing project, an initiative you yourself declared dead. You called it a pet project. We call it the future. What are you talking about? Matthew demanded. We have one more presentation, Arthur said, pressing a button on the intercom. Please send her in. The double doors at the end of the room opened. Somi Hayes walked in. She was 8 months pregnant now, and she was not the broken, weeping woman Matthew had fired. She was dressed in a custom-tailored navy blue maternity suit that screamed power. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was calm, focused, and absolutely lethal. She looked like a queen. Matthew stared, his mouth literally hanging open. "Somi, what is this? You don't work here. Security." "She's here as our guest, Matthew," Mrs. Blackwood snapped. "Sit down and be quiet." Brianna looked like she had seen a ghost. Somi didn't even look at her husband. She walked to the front of the room, plugged her own laptop into the projector, and her presentation, Project Atlas, lit up the screen. It wasn't slick graphics. It was live, terrifyingly complex data. "Good morning, members of the board," Somi said, her voice clear and strong, filling the room. "For the last 3 weeks, my team and I have been wargaming the future of Vanguard strategies. What you're seeing here is Atlas." For the next 20 minutes, Somi didn't just give a presentation. She conducted a masterclass in strategic execution. "Matthew told you he was projecting 15% growth on Norstar," she began. "He was wrong. He was using my old 6-month-old models. The models I told him were flawed." She clicked a button. The screen filled with red alerts. "This is the live data from Asia Pacific Shipping. Norstar is, as of this morning, facing a catastrophic supply chain collapse. Just as I predicted, they are poised to lose 40% of their Q2 revenue," the board members murmured. Matthew was sheet white. "Jessica Price was going to pull the account," Somi continued, "but she agreed to wait. Because I didn't offer her a gift basket. I offered her a solution." She clicked again. A new, complex model appeared. "This is Atlas, optimized for Norstar. It's an AI-driven logistics overhaul. It reroutes their entire fleet, divests from the failing ports, and opens up 3 new, unexploited routes in South America. This plan doesn't just save their 40%, it increases their profit margin by 22% over the next 18 months. "She's lying!" Matthew yelled, jumping to his feet. "She stole company property. This is fantasy." "Is it?" Somi asked calmly, and turned to the conference phone. "Jessica, are you there?" "I am, Somi." Jessica Price's voice filled the room. "And I've seen this presentation. The board should know I've already signed the new contract. A 5-year exclusive, with Somi Hayes and Project Atlas. Vanguard just saved its biggest client. She did." The blood drained from Matthew's face. He sank back into his chair. Somi wasn't finished. She proceeded to lay out, with surgical precision, every single misstep Matthew had made. The money he'd wasted on Brianna's rebranding. The other 2 clients he'd lost. The senior talent he'd fired. She never once mentioned the affair. She didn't have to. The numbers told the entire story of his incompetence, his narcissism, and his catastrophic lack of judgment. When she finished, the room was silent. Somi looked at the board. "Atlas isn't just a fix for one client. It's a new division. It's a scalable, proprietary AI that we can sell to every client on our roster. It's not just a product. It's the new Vanguard strategies." She unplugged her laptop. "Thank you for your time." Arthur Kensington stood up, a slow, satisfied smile on his face. "Thank you, Somi." "Matthew, Brianna, you may wait outside." "Wait outside?" Matthew scoffed, though his voice was trembling. "Arthur, I am the CEO. This is insubordination." "Matthew," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, low tone, "you are a man who inherited a fortress and set it on fire to impress a child. You have been a fool. You're not just a bad CEO. You're a liability. The board has been watching you for 6 months. We've been watching you lie, cheat, and steal thunder from the one brilliant mind in your orbit." He picked up a gavel. The board convened an emergency session this morning, before this meeting. Based on the preview of Ms. Hayes's presentation and a full report on your for cause firing of her, which I might add was a catastrophic legal exposure. We held a vote. He banged the gavel. Effective immediately, Matthew Thorne, you are terminated as CEO and removed from the board of directors of Vanguard Strategies. We are activating the morality clause in your contract. Morality clause? Matthew shrieked. You can't. Misuse of company funds, fraternization, and gross negligence, Arthur said calmly. I believe you'll find it ironclad. The same for cause logic you used on your wife. It seems you're not entitled to severance. Brianna Jennings was a weeping, mascara-stained mess. But what about my job? I'm the head of strategy. Arthur looked at her as if she were a bug. You were never an employee, Ms. Jennings. You were a consultant. Your contract is terminated. Security is waiting for you both. Please escort Mr. Thorne and Ms. Jennings from the building. They are not to be allowed back on the premises. Matthew was purple with rage. You pregnant witch! He screamed at Somi, lunging toward her. The two security guards, the same ones who had escorted Somi out, grabbed Matthew's arms. This time they showed no shame. They looked pleased. You'll never get away with this. The company is mine, he howled as they dragged him, struggling, from the room. My Hermes basket, Brianna wailed, grabbing her purse as the other guard firmly guided her out. The door shut. The room was blessedly quiet. Somi stood there, her hand on her belly. She had done it. Arthur Kensington turned to her. The entire board was now smiling. Well, Mrs. Blackwood said, that was refreshing. Arthur cleared his throat. Somi Hayes, the board would like to formally apologize for the lapse in our judgment. And we would like to offer you the position of Interim Chief Executive Officer of Vanguard Strategies, effective immediately, with a full mandate to implement Project Atlas. Somi looked at the faces around the table. They were looking at her with respect, with awe. She took a deep breath, feeling the baby kick, as if in celebration. I accept, she said. Now, our first order of business. Let's rehire my engineering team and send Jessica Price a real gift. And someone please, for the love of God, change the font back. Somi Hayes didn't just take the CEO chair. She rebuilt the throne. In the 6 weeks that followed, Vanguard Strategies was transformed. The old, toxic boys' club culture evaporated. She promoted Sarah to Chief Operating Officer. She rehired the talent Matthew had fired. The rose gold offices were repainted. Project Atlas was rolled out, and within 2 months, Vanguard had signed 3 new high-level clients, and the stock had jumped 28%. Matthew Thorne, meanwhile, was in freefall. The morality clause held. He was left with nothing but his Tom Ford suits and a mountain of personal debt. The divorce was finalized in record time. The Soho loft, it turned out, was part of a trust Somi's father and Arthur had set up for her years ago. Matthew had just been living in it. He was, legally, left with nothing. Brianna Jennings disappeared from the financial world, last seen promoting a detox tea on Instagram. 6 weeks after the boardroom coup, Somi was in a private room at Lenox Hill Hospital, holding her newborn daughter, a beautiful, healthy girl she named Grace. There was a soft knock on the door. It was Arthur Kensington, holding a comically large bouquet of white roses. Arthur, Somi smiled, tired but radiant. You came. I wouldn't miss it, he said, his old eyes crinkling as he looked at the baby. She's beautiful, Somi. She has your eyes. She has my fight, Somi said. That too. He sat down, placing a leather portfolio on the bedside table. The board has voted. The interim tag is gone. You are the permanent CEO. The contract is in there. The compensation package, well, let's just say you won't be flying commercial. Somi laughed, a real, full laugh. Thank you, Arthur, for everything, for believing in me. Nonsense. I just got out of the way of talent. He paused, his expression turning serious. There is one small, ugly piece of business. Matthew. He's destitute and desperate. What has he done? He's contesting the divorce. He's demanding a paternity test. He's planning to sue for paternal custody of Grace, and by extension, a share of your new stock options. He's claiming you're an unfit mother because you're a CEO. He says the baby is his only legacy left. Somi looked down at her daughter, who was sleeping peacefully. She felt no anger, no fear, just a cool, quiet finality. She looked up at Arthur and gave him a slow, secret smile. Let him, she said. Somi? I don't. Let him file the motion. Let him pay the lawyers he can't afford. Let him demand the test. I'll take it. She reached for the portfolio, pulling out a different file, one from her own bag. It was a medical report. She handed it to Arthur. He read it, his eyebrows shooting up. Matthew and I, we had fertility issues. 3 years ago, we went to a specialist. This, she tapped the paper, is the report. Matthew is sterile, a 0 count. The doctors said it was impossible. He refused to believe it. He was too proud. He stormed out and never spoke of it again. Arthur looked from the paper to the baby. Then, Grace. When I knew my marriage was over, long before Brianna, long before the firing, I knew I still wanted a child, a family. On my terms, I went to a donor clinic. Somi gently stroked her daughter's head. This is my baby, Arthur. By contract, by blood, by love, by choice. He has no claim on her. He has no claim on my company. He has no legacy. Arthur Kensington stared at the new CEO. He had seen predators on Wall Street. He had seen sharks and wolves, but he had never seen anything as formidable as the woman in front of him. Matthew Thorne hadn't just lost a fight. He had been comprehensively, strategically, and utterly erased. My goodness, Somi, Arthur said, a slow smile spreading across his face as he put the report away. Welcome to the chairman's seat. Your father would have been so proud. 3 months had passed. The corner office on the 52nd floor, once a shrine to Matthew Thorne's ego, was unrecognizable. Somi had moved the CEO's office down to the 48th floor to be closer to her teams. The mahogany and chrome were gone, replaced with warm woods, whiteboards covered in code, and glass walls that were almost always transparent. In a small, soundproofed room attached to her office, a full-time nanny hired by the company cared for Grace. Somi was a CEO, but she was a mother first, and she refused to sacrifice one for the other. Vanguard 2.0, as the press had dubbed it, was thriving. Project Atlas was a resounding success, and Somi had secured not just Norstar, but 2 of their largest competitors by offering them different, bespoke versions of the AI. She was being hailed as a visionary, the architect of the new Wall Street. Her old life felt like a distant, painful dream. Until the papers arrived. They were delivered to her doorman by a seedy-looking process server. Thorne V. Hayes, he was doing it. Matthew was officially suing for paternity and custody of Grace, claiming Somi had stolen his only heir and was an unfit, career-obsessed mother. Arthur Kensington was apoplectic. He's an insect, Somi, a deluded, penniless insect. We will crush him. No, Somi said, calmly, reviewing the documents in her office. Grace was asleep in her arms, a tiny, warm weight. He's a ghost. He's trying to haunt us. You don't crush a ghost, Arthur. You exorcise it. She looked at Sarah, her new COO. Schedule a deposition, get our legal team, and make sure he's there. I want to see his face. 2 weeks later, they met in a sterile conference room at the offices of Somi's lawyers. a firm that specialized in high-conflict corporate and family law. Somi walked in, flanked by Ms. Harding, the firm's senior partner, a woman with shark's eyes and a spine of tungsten. Matthew was already there. The sight of him was shocking. The Tom Ford suits were gone. He was wearing an off-the-rack department store suit that fit him poorly. It was wrinkled, and the shirt collar was graying. He had lost weight, and his eyes, once charismatic and bright, were dull, filled with a sour, desperate rage. He was a king in exile, and he looked pathetic. His lawyer was a small-time ambulance chaser named Leo Gellis, who looked overwhelmed by the opulence of the law firm. "Let's begin," Ms. Harding said, her voice clipping the air. Gellis cleared his throat, trying to sound important. "My client, Mr. Thorne, is here to assert his paternal rights. He has reason to believe Miss Hayes, in a vindictive and calculated move, is denying him access to his biological child, Grace Thorne." "Grace Hayes," Somi corrected him, her voice ice. "His biological child," Gellis repeated, in an attempt to defraud him of his rightful role as a father. "He is the biological father. He is prepared to take a DNA test to prove it, and he is petitioning for immediate 50% custody and, of course, commensurate child support given Ms. Hayes's newfound financial status." Matthew smirked, leaning back. This was his checkmate. He thought he had her. He thought, at the very least, he could bleed her dry in a nasty custody fight that would taint her new, shiny CEO image. Ms. Harding listened patiently. When Gellis had finished his rambling, posturing speech, she smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Mr. Gellis, we thank you for that performance, and my client is in full agreement." Matthew's smirk wavered. "Agreement?" "Yes," Harding said. "We welcome a paternity test. In fact, we insist on it. We're prepared to schedule one for this afternoon, at a lab of your choosing, with court supervision. But first, we have a matter of disclosure." She slid a thick, bound document across the polished table. "You have, on behalf of your client, submitted a sworn affidavit, signed by Mr. Thorne. In this affidavit, he states, under penalty of perjury, that he believes himself to be the biological father. Is that correct?" "Of course," Gellis said, puffing up. "Then your client has a very serious problem," Harding said. "Please open to Exhibit A." Gellis fumbled with the binder. Matthew leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Exhibit A," Harding narrated, "is a full, certified medical report from Dr. Alistair Reed of the New York Fertility Clinic, dated 3.5 years ago. It is signed by both Ms. Hayes and Mr. Thorne. Do you recognize your signature, Mr. Thorne?" Matthew's face had gone from pale to a waxy, greenish white. He was staring at the paper as if it were a snake. His lawyer, Leo Gellis, read the summary page. His jaw dropped. This report, it says—" "I'll read it for the record," Harding said, her voice sharp. "It states that Mr. Matthew Thorne, due to complications from a severe case of mumps in his late teens, is medically sterile. His sperm count is, and I quote, 0 viable. It concludes, natural biological conception is an impossibility." Gellis looked at his client in pure, unadulterated horror. "Matthew, what is this? Is this real?" "It's a fake," Matthew sputtered, his voice cracking. "She forged it. She's a liar. She's trying to—" "Is she?" Harding cut him off. "Because Exhibit B is a sworn affidavit from Dr. Alistair Reed, taken yesterday, authenticating the report and stating he is prepared to testify in court. And Exhibit C, well, that's my favorite. It's the donor agreement, signed by Ms. Hayes from the Manhattan Cryobank, dated 10 months ago. Case closed." Matthew was hyperventilating. He had forgotten. In his narcissistic rage, he had buried the one truth he could never accept, his own failure. "Mr. Gellis," Somi spoke for the first time, her voice low and dangerous. "Your client didn't just file a frivolous suit. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he was not the father. He signed a legal document, under oath, stating that he was. That isn't a family court issue. That's perjury. It's a felony." Leo Gellis looked like he was going to be sick. He was a small-time lawyer, and he had just been caught aiding and abetting a felony against one of the most powerful new CEOs in New York. We withdraw the suit," Gellis stammered, shoving his papers into his briefcase. "Effective immediately. We withdraw." "Oh, it's too late for that," Ms. Harding said, standing up. "My client is filing a countersuit for malicious prosecution, defamation, and emotional distress. We will be seeking the entirety of your legal fees, Mr. Gellis, and damages from Mr. Thorne. Furthermore, we are submitting this entire file to the district attorney's office this afternoon. Your client lied to the court, Matthew," she said, using his name for the first time. "He tried to extort a woman and her child." Matthew finally broke. He slumped in his chair, a hollowed-out man. He was finished. He had no money, no job, no reputation, and now he was facing criminal charges. Somi stood up. She straightened the jacket of her suit. She looked down at the pathetic man who had once been her husband. "You told me I was soft, Matthew," she said, her voice quiet, cutting him to the bone. "You told me I was a liability. You tried to take my job, my home, and my dignity. And when that failed, you tried to steal my daughter to use her as a bargaining chip." She leaned in, just a fraction. "You're not a ghost, Matthew. You're just a parasite. And you've finally run out of hosts." She turned, without a backward glance, and walked out of the room, her heels clicking with the sound of finality. She returned to her office, where her daughter was just waking up from her nap. She picked Grace up, breathing in her scent, and looked out the window at the city she was on her way to conquering. The ghost was gone. The machine was hers. What you just heard wasn't just a story about revenge. It was a story about value. Matthew saw Somi's worth only in relation to himself. But Somi, even at her lowest point, knew her own value was independent. She knew her worth was in her mind, her integrity, and her resilience. Karma isn't just a mystical force, it's the natural consequence of your own actions. Matthew's arrogance, his cruelty, his laziness, those were the seeds of his own destruction. Somi's brilliance, her patience, and her quiet strength were the foundation of her victory. This story is a reminder. Never let anyone else define your worth, and never, ever underestimate the person someone else has thrown away. The one they discard might just be the one who ends up as their boss. If you were moved by Somi's story, please hit that like button. What was your favorite twist? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own power, and please subscribe to the channel for more real-life drama every week.